cult classic, action movies, shows, and the artists who helped make them. This is Action Gems. And welcome to another episode of Action Gems, where we find them and you watch them. Matt and I are really excited to bring you this interview because this is with none other than veteran actor Ronny Cox, who played the villain Dick Jones in one of our favorite movies of all time, RoboCop. Ronny was amazingly generous with taking time to talk with us about his experiences making that film, delving into the character, working with the director Paul Verhoeven, and even later on he talked about his experiences working on the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Total Recall. Listening to Ronny's stories about how he came up working in theater and working his way through the industry, it was just a treasure trove of knowledge. We also just talk about a lot of other random things as the show goes. So without further ado, here's Ronny Cox.
I'm from New Mexico, but I graduated in college, and once I graduated from college, I've never lived there since. I go back occasionally. I still have relatives there. My sister lives in Clovis, and I have a brother in El Paso, but I don't. And I went back oddly enough, this last year I was inducted into the New Mexico Music Hall of Fame. So I was back there doing some concerts and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But with me is Matt Kohler as well.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Matt. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Just also got off the Atlanta road, which
Yeah.
Interstate here is terrible.
Yeah, my bass player lives in Athens. So.
Oh, yep. Yeah, I mean, I guess you are aware, being in LA, there's just no trains. There's no, like, metro patrol to, like, go from place to place. Like, I love the Chicago area because of that.
Same with LA. They took the red cars out here because they wanted to turn this into a car city. And oddly enough, they dumped all of the cars in the ocean so that nobody could ever get them again.
What?
Exactly. You can look that up. They actually took all of the trolley cars and things that were in LA, and they wanted to make damn sure that nobody ever. So they dumped them in the ocean.
When did this happen?
Oh hell, probably in the late 30s, early 40s.
Oh wow.
Jeez.
It was when the LA had made the decision to turn themselves into a freeway city.
Which probably wasn't the best idea looking at traffic.
well, and yeah, but who and certainly, I mean, people talk about the smog now, but believe me, the smog is nothing like it was when I moved here in the early 70s. You can't believe the smog that was here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've heard a lot of things like that, and like New York City's a lot cleaner than it was.
But see, New York City don't have the inversion layer that we have, and so smog, which is they used to have. They used to have smog warnings here. You were little kids, you weren't allowed to go outside, and people would. Now I'm lucky. I'm a former marathoner, and I'm one of those people that even when it was a bad smog day, I was sort of almost impervious to it. Mary used to say, "Oh God, it's a bad smog day," and I wouldn't know. Mm-hmm. But people who are susceptible to that, and now they talk about smog. The smog is zero these days compared to what it was in those days. And see, that's another thing that people complain about the Santa Ana winds out here. but the hidden asset of the because that's the winds off the desert that blows the smog into the ocean, and so when the Santa Ana winds come in, we have clean air for a while.
Oh.
Wow.
Huh.
Well, I guess that's a much looked forward to time of year then.
Yeah.
I mean there's a lot right there that I did not know about. I mean, I knew the smog was bad, but I didn't know that it's cleaned up.
Yeah.
I've never been to LA.
I have never been to any of California.
Well, I grew up in New Mexico, as I said, but it's without. I hate to tell you guys this, but without L.A. and San Francisco, California is Mississippi.
I've never heard that one before.
I mean, we've got two really liberal cities here, but I don't know what you guys' politics are, but mine are pretty left wing, and everybody thinks that California is this radically left leaning state, and it's not. I mean, yeah, San Francisco and LA are. That's it.
Yeah,
That's kind of. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I am left leaning, and I noticed that a lot with this election.
Cities.
Yes.
I mean, and if you look at it, they did a study of if you take the people where all the money is made, 70% of the money are made in Democratic districts. 70%.
Jeez.
I never knew that.
And all those, see, that's the reason, I hate to say it, but that's the reason I hate the Electoral College. We allow open spaces to have more votes than, I mean, LA County has more population than like 25 or 30 states. But they have like a gazillion more representatives than we've got.
Of course.
Yeah, because everyone's allowed the same amount of electoral college, or is just like it's based off of population, right?
The population, but like a House of Representatives, a district gets the same. See. I mean, every state gets 2 senators.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, we're a population of a gazillion million here in California. We get 2 senators. My home state of New Mexico, when I was there was less than 1 million people in the entire state. They have 2 senators.
Yeah.
You can go figure that out.
I mean, I don't understand it either. I mean, obviously, I guess when this started, you needed to have a voice for every state.
Well, it was always a way of giving little uneducated men a step up. Why do you think slaves were only 3/5 of a vote or 3/5 of a person? And I mean, it's always been, and originally, they didn't want one man. They thought only the elite guys should pick the leaders of us. So don't get me into politics.
Sorry.
So anyway, what do you guys want to talk about today?
Well, really, we just wanted to start off with the beginning of what got you into film, beginning with Deliverance, or leading up to Deliverance, and really leading up to RoboCop, and even after RoboCop.
Well, Mary and I graduated from college in '63, and Mary had a National Science Foundation fellowship Mary was a brilliant woman. In case you didn't know, she went to on a National Science Foundation fellowship. Went to Georgetown University there to work on her PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And I started work at Arena Stage, which was as a production intern, which is a glorified word for indentured servant. And I was there for 6 years while Mary was getting her PhD. And by the way, by this time we have 2 kids.
Oh wow!
Yeah, our first son was born when Mary was like 3 days before she was 20, and still had 2. And then our second son was born when she was in grad school.
Wow.
And so we lived that whole struggling actor, graduate student existence for 6 years, and then Mary got her PhD, and we went to New York. I was offered a small role in a broad. We had done a production of Indians at Arena Stage, and they were taking it to Broadway. So, and I only had just a tiny role, and I was offered a role in that. But Mary had just finished her PhD, so she got a postdoctoral fellowship with Sloan Kettering in New York, which I don't know if you guys know them or not, but they're probably the most prestigious cancer research organization in the world.
Oh wow!
And so she had a 4-year postdoc with him, and so while she was doing the 4 years of postdoc, I did that Broadway show closed right away, but I did a workshop show for Joe Papp, which ended up with Marty Sheen and Charlie Durning and a couple of other people.
Oh wow!
And I got noticed in that off-Broadway showcase show, and long story short, when the movie people came to John Borman came to New York looking for good unknown actors. They wanted unknown actors. They came and they went by Joe Papp's place and asked if there was anyone that he would recommend, and he recommended they see me.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up, first of all, I was the first guy they saw, not because I was at the top of their list, mind you. They were going to start seeing people at like 10 o'clock in the morning. They asked me to come in at 9 just to see if I was worthy of being seen.
Yeah.
And they gave me a copy of the script, and I went away and came. Anyway, long story short, I met with John Borman a couple, 3 times during that week. They kept calling me back. And eventually they flew, 12 or 15 of us out here to California and tested us for those 4 roles, for the 4 canoeists. And out of that 15 or 16 guys that they tested, I was the only one that they liked. And then a couple of weeks later, they found Ned Beatty at Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. And this is probably the first time in the history of film, actually, that they found the 2 guys below the title before they found the 2 guys above the title. Because Ned and I spent the next 4 or 5 weeks sitting around waiting for them to decide, and then they eventually decided on Bert and John for those other 2 roles. And so that was my first time in front of a movie camera. And I mean, and I had been literally, you couldn't have known a more unknown or unsung actor than me. And then all of a sudden, doors were opened to me that I didn't even know existed before that. And so then it really was, just changing my life in the most profound. Because when I did deliver, Mary and I by that time had been married 11 years,
mm-hmm.
and had 2 small boys. And I had never made more than $6,000 in 1 year in my life. And so,
quite the change.
So it was truly sort of life-changing.
Jeez.
That sound like a real blessing though, because yeah, you guys had really been paying your dues up to that point, and then that.
Well, you gotta know, we didn't feel deprived. We were completely happy and doing exactly what we wanted to do. It's just that it didn't entail having any money.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, but there was never. I mean, I was lucky in that respect. Both Mary and I were lucky in that neither one of us, and especially Mary, we never had that gene where you need security. Because there are a whole lot of people that having security. I mean, Mary and I, when we picked up and moved to Washington D.C., we had a car that would start once a day, and we got as far as D.C. and the car within 6 blocks of where we were going, and the car stopped, never to start again. I mean, we were like the Jodes in Grapes of Wrath, and we lived that kind of life, happy as we could be, but on the other hand, just from hand to mouth.
Yeah.
Of course.
That, my mom, she told me when she was younger, she had a car that, like, the oil was messed up in it or something, to where she would have to get an oil change almost every day. So she always had oil in her car and changed it after she got done driving, so she could do it, so she could drive it more.
Exactly. That's like my car. My car, it would start once a day, and so if I had to stop to get gas, I had to leave the car running, because otherwise it wouldn't start again. You talk about how dangerous that is. That you're filling up a car that's been driving all day with the car still running.
Yeah.
I mean, that's asking for disaster.
When I was 16, the first car I'd gotten was a Camaro. It was a 2000 Camaro, and I thought it was great because, you know, it looked cool. And then, of course, the inside was not so cool, because I think the first 2 weeks I had it, I literally got out of school and I was like, I'm gonna drive my cool car and it's gonna run great, and it just doesn't start at all. And I was like, oh, that's great. It was sold to me with a dead battery, pretty much. And then, like 6 months later, I'm driving it, and I'm hearing rocks. It sounds like rocks are turning over in the engine. And I'm like, what's going on here? Can't be anything too serious. And then the car just starts locking up on the road in the middle of traffic. And luckily, someone got out and helped me push it off the road. But yeah, it definitely.
We've all been there.
Yes. Yes, we have.
So I do have a question. Was it hard for you to transition from theater to on-screen acting?
Not really. First of all, I'm one of the few actors. I mean, my first 10 years as an actor were all stage work, and I did 6 years at Arena Stage, which is acting in the round, which is even more of a problem.
As doing theater for I practice a lot of like combat theater, like sword fighting, like rapier and dagger, broadsword, and so I do not envy you, because I don't think I could ever do the 360 degree around audience.
But here's the thing about it. I mean, I'm one of the few actors that you're probably ever going to talk to that will admit to the fact that it's much harder being a film actor than it is a stage actor. You can get away with all kinds of tricks on a stage because, first of all, the audience is sometimes 16, 18, 20 rows back, and they can't see what. And so I've seen people, I've been around long enough, but when that camera comes in close and shows what's going on inside your eyes, there better be something going on. And so the hardest acting in the world is acting for film. And the people that tell you that acting on stage is much harder, they're full of shit. Because it's much harder being a film actor.
That makes sense.
You can't get away with tricks. When that camera comes in, you better be home there.
Yeah, I mean, because you're pretty much, everyone's now like in the first row instead of, like you said, 20, 30.
Not only in the first row, but not only that, you can't get away with on stage. You get away with big, huge gestures that are unrealistic. Because you have to make a movement to get everybody's eyes to look at you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Of course.
And the hardest thing about film, the hardest thing about real acting is doing less. Much less. And look at every one of your when you just see a person that's there and you don't have all the histrionics going on with it. And there's nothing I hate worse than, I'm making quotation marks now, acting. Because when someone's up there acting, then I just go and get some popcorn or something, because and they're really good, and I mean the really great actors are the ones that you just, they're there all the time, and they've done the homework, and they're not impressing you with it. You're just seeing the character.
Were there certain actors that you were looking at during your early years of just for inspiration, or?
Yeah, there are a lot of really, and I'll tell you, one of the great actors, Sean Penn is one of the great actors around, but Robert Duvall is a fantastic actor. Gene Hackman, Spencer Tracy, those kind of guys who just are there.
I mean, you are right, because a lot of the actors that I've gravitated towards, just watching, are not the character actors. Like I look at comedy. The ones that try really hard, make the funny faces, or
well, and that's the worst. That's the word that you take, especially guys that play dumb guys, because they're sitting there and they're commenting on the character. Now, if you want to see someone that really knows how to play a character, look at Billy Bob Thornton in Sling Blade.
Oh, yeah.
Now, and he's not commenting on the character. He's being that guy. And because dumb guys, they don't think they're dumb. They don't think they're stupid.
Yeah.
They think they're the smartest people in the world.
That is definitely true with comedy, because, my favorite comedians, I really like Steve Martin and John Candy, who they just seem like people, in the movies I've watched them in, or even Monty Python as well. I'm a huge fan of them.
I know every Monty Python skit by heart.
Oh,
I'll tell you, the funniest man alive was Richard Pryor.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you know.
I know who Richard Pryor is, because he was actually born in a town 45 minutes away from me.
Well, he and I became really good friends right after he burned himself up. I did the first film with him after he burned himself up. There was a film called Some Kind of Hero.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That I did with Richard, and he and I became really close, tight friends. And guys they're guys that know how to be funny.
Yep.
And here's the thing: less is always more. And when they have to make sure that you got the joke, then I'm way ahead of them already.
That's one thing that bugs me a lot about modern comedy, is they think that by explaining the punchline, that in and of itself is the joke.
Exactly. I mean, if they don't give you credit for being able to get the joke.
No.
And so they say, so you're not smart enough to get this. I'm gonna underline this so so you get it.
Yeah, and it's so insulting.
It totally is.
And honestly, that's one thing that we did like about RoboCop was that, I mean, yeah, like, you know, if you go on the internet or whatever and you see the genre it's labeled as, it's, you know, action or sci-fi, but it is very much this dark comedy because there is just so much subtle, like very low frequency humor.
And that comedy was all put in there by Paul Verhoeven. The script itself wasn't really that good, but what made it great was Paul Verhoeven. By him injecting that humor and him making us care about the moments. That's really a triumph of direction, if you want to know the truth. And to tell you the truth, in many ways, RoboCop was as big a boon to my career as Deliverance was originally. Because after I played Deliverance, Drew was the Mr. Sweetheart, nice Boy Scout, nice guy, and right. I got labeled as being a sensitive, and playing sensitive, especially in those days out here, was the equivalent of being weak.
Yeah.
If you played a sensitive character, that somehow got equated with, and so I got known as being a soft actor. So if any role had any guts or balls to it, I sort of didn't get it because I was this sweet, nice next door neighborly guy, and so I jumped at the chance to play Dick Jones because it gave me a chance to here's also the genius of Paul Verhoeven in that he wanted me to play Dick Jones too because he wanted to trade on the residual goodwill that when my character comes on screen, I've got 10, 15 years of playing these nice guys, so you're all prepared to say, hey, this is a good guy. And then when Dick Jones is bad,
yeah,
then it takes a really dark turn. And someone once said, and it's one of my favorite compliments, they said, Ronny, having you play Dick Jones is a little like an astronaut that's gone bad.
Yeah.
That's a very grim way to put that. I mean, and yeah, you totally get that from, I mean, the first scene where you're given that death glare to Bob Morton, so...
Yeah, and poor Miguel. Miguel, he absolutely, adamantly did not want me to grab his hair.
Really?
Yes, and I had to talk him into it. I mean, because I want, and he said, "Oh no." He said, "I don't know what I'll do if you do that." And I said, "Oh, Miguel, you're an actor. I'm an actor. You do what you want, what you do." And let's go and to Miguel's everlasting glory, he realized after the fact that it was exactly the right thing to do, and it was good for both our characters. But Miguel really didn't want me to do that, and I'll tell you something else about that particular scene. You know, RoboCop was a fairly low budget film in those days, yeah. and they almost pulled the plug on it several times, and 2 or 3 times they went to Paul and John Davidson, the producer, and said, cut together a scene so that we could show to investors, and they cut that scene together.
I mean, it is one of the best scenes in the entire movie, and I think that's something that's really powerful about RoboCop, is that, like, it's an action movie, but, like, the scenes that are not action based are some of the strongest, if not the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the brilliance of Paul Verhoeven. I mean, and you know, and I'm sure you've heard all the stories about his volatility, and he is a really volatile guy. Although I have to admit that in all the 2 films that I worked with him on, I never ever. I mean, I don't know if he. I don't know if he just sort of. I don't know why, but he never ever. We never had even the slightest crossword.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's, I mean, obviously it's important for anyone working with anyone in any field, but definitely when you're an actor, and it's very healthy to have that close working relationship with the
I've
director.
seen him blow up. I've seen him blow up, and it doesn't matter how big the star is either.
Of course.
I've seen him go through the roof. I mean, he's really one of the most volatile directors I've ever worked with. But I think another reason why Paul and I hit it off so well, I don't know if you know this about Paul, but Paul has a PhD in chemistry too. So
wow.
so Paul and my wife Mary, they were both PhD chemists, and so they hit it off too.
Oh wow! So I mean, so did it feel like you were ever on edge, or were like the other actors on edge on, making RoboCop or Total Recall?
What do you mean?
Like, because like
Just-
with Paul being volatile.
Just knowing that Paul could be volatile from time to time. I mean,
Oh hell! Sometimes he would blow up and just disappear. Well, sometimes when things weren't going right, he would just. I mean, I remember one day that I thought I was in real trouble because I had shot for like 3 or 4 days before we really started. I shot all those scenes in Total Recall.
mm-hmm.
If you remember the ones where Cohaagen is talking to his people over the television.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
there are like 2 or 3 or 4 of those little scenes where he's addressing people, and I went down to Mexico, and we shot those scenes a week or so before the principal photography started.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back to LA, and I went to Rob Bottin's makeup place, and you know who he is, right? Rob Bottin is the guy that did all the special effects makeup. I mean, he's a genius.
Oh, wow.
The 3 breasts, all of that stuff. That's all Rob Bottin. And Rob Bottin, I'm sure you've heard of people that have a photographic memory.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Bottin has photographic memory with his hands. He can sit and look at you and take a pen and paper and draw a photographic likeness of you, or he can take clay and mold an absolute likeness of you. So Arnold and I had to have a whole bunch of masks made.
Mm-hmm.
For the scene at the end where our faces are being distorted.
Uh-huh.
And the way he could do it, he could make all these masks. We spent one whole day making every kind of distorted face that we could, and they made replicas of that. And then Rob could take those masks and by putting air pockets under, he could pump air and even make whatever face we were making, make that even more grotesque.
That is absolutely amazing.
All that's in my mind. All that's in my mind right now is when, like, your face is ballooned by like 3 times the size, your eyes are bulging out, and
exactly. And he could do that because he started from absolute life masks that with us making faces, but even taking those faces and then he just exaggerate those expressions so they were always more or less realistic.
gosh,
And so Arnold and I, first of all, our faces were sore the next day from making our muscles go in all those different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But he made all those masks of us, and when we're down there making it, and they were putting his stuff. It was amazing. So to do that, they had to when they're making those masks, we spent a whole day in the chair with them putting things on. The only thing you can breathe through is a couple of straws, so they're very claustrophobic.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, but then they had these masks, and so he took pictures of us after, and he to put that masks on me, they had to slick my hair back. And as it turns out, I saw the pictures of that with me with that hair slicked back like that, and realized that that's how Cohaagen should look. Because I had already shot like 3 or 4 scenes with my hair just regular.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And so now I had to go back to Mexico and confront Paul. and I went and I said, Paul, you're going to be mad at me, but I want you to see this. And I showed him the pictures of me with my hair all slicked back like Cohaagen looks.
Uh-huh.
And he looked at me for a long minute, and he said, I'm really pissed at you, Ronny. And I said, why? He said, because I have to shoot those scenes again.
Oh, man.
So he got it right away. And that really was the look that I think sort of made Cohaagen. Was what Mary used to call the Lizard King look.
Man, so I really hearing stories about them with like the prop making and just like how impressive that is. I really wish films did that now, because that's like one thing that I've always been impressed with movies like Total Recall.
Well, and Rob Bottin, I don't know if you know him. Rob Bottin, he has this. He was discovered when he was like 18 or 19 years old. He became like the top special effects makeup guy in all of California. And he grew up in like Riverside, someplace out there, and in the barrio actually. Mm-hmm. And so what he did is, you go to his shop, you go out to his shop, and all the guys he grew up with and went to school with, he taught them all how. And so he has a whole cottage industry of all the guys that he grew up with.
Wow.
I mean, it's the most amazing thing that he's a real hero, Rob Bottin, as well as being a genius.
And that's what's so cool about that time of movies, is that I feel like the makeup effects guys were as much the stars of the movies as what the stars
absolutely.
were.
Which, in a way, it was kind of funny. The guy that did the makeup on Deliverance, Mike Hancock, was in. He's now Morgan Freeman's makeup guy, but Mike got all kinds of notices for doing my arm in Deliverance, and
wow.
he had nothing to do with it. That's just my arm. That's just, I could do that. My shoulder comes out of place. And so he didn't really have to do anything. And so people would come to him after that. And he got all kinds of jobs. And they would ask him how he did that. He said, trade secret. I can't do it.
That's amazing. Going back to RoboCop, because you said a lot of that was Paul making RoboCop, was there like any moment in that where you're like, this is really coming together? Or was there any moment that you're like, oh God, what am I doing here? Like, was there any like, just like any scene that you, or any time that you could think of where it was like, this seems to be coming together, or like this is falling apart?
No, neither of us. You're just there doing the way we're all doing the good work, and we shot it in Dallas, as you know.
Yep.
And it was everybody was doing their work, and I mean, I felt sorry for the poor guy that played Kenny, who I mean, and that's the other thing. The Paul, if he was could be accused of anything, when you got shot with squibs or something like that, he made sure that they were overloaded, and so the day that they shot me out of the thing, they were loaded up with stuff front and back on me, and it literally was such a shock to my system that I almost passed out and I threw up for like an hour.
Oh my
Holy
God!
cow.
Yeah, it was just because it just because see, that's the other thing about Paul. Paul grew up in war-torn, I guess, Belgium. Anyway, he grew up seeing real war,
Right.
and so that was the other thing about RoboCop is he had to fight with the censors a lot because to keep it from getting an X rating.
Yeah.
And in many ways, the censors, I think, made it into a more disturbingly violent film than it would have been if they had left Paul alone. Because see, here's the thing: that since Paul wanted the movie, he wanted the violence to be way over the top, so that like in the first 2 or 3 times you see this violence, you say, "Oh, this is a joke. It's so over the top," and then you could just accept that this was, that this was really over the top. Well, the censors kept cutting back and cutting back and cutting back, so that it really got to the age. So it really got known as a really violent film, and I think because they cut so much stuff back.
And
Less is more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it became more realistic.
Yeah.
They cut enough back so that it was absolutely realistic. Whereas before
Yeah.
it was laughable. It was like a comic book over the top.
And I mean, I will say that movie does a solid job at setting the tone on the violence within the first 10 minutes, and that's just with the Ed 209 scene. Like it, I mean, just the loudness of the gunshots and the visceralness of Kenny being blown away. And then how you and Dan O'Herlihy just, you just kind of talk about it like a computer fried or something.
Yep.
And it's just, you're just so nonchalant. You're like, oh my God, this is sick in many different ways.
Listen, guys, I hate to cut this short, but that was my son, and I've been invited over to the house to have dinner with those guys.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. Well, I hope you have a nice dinner, and it was really great talking with you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Well, I'll buy that for $1. You just listened to our interview with Ronny Cox. It was an incredible time to be able to talk with someone who was such an integral part of a movie that both Matt and I had been watching since we were 4, 5, which really was probably not the best age to be watching a movie where people are getting their hands shot off and getting shot in the head and the dick. But nonetheless, it's an important movie in the action genre, and we are just really glad that we were able to talk with someone who was there for the making of it, to tell us the creative process with Paul Verhoeven behind making that movie truly what it was. Tune in next week, where we talk with someone from a certain cult classic animated series from the 90s. It's not Batman the Animated Series, but when you see the name of the show, you're gonna know. And we're really looking forward to sharing this one with you, because this is gonna lead into other interviews that are also related to this show. Till then, I'm Richie Watkins, and Matt Kohler and I had the pleasure of bringing you another episode of Action Gems, where we find them and you watch them. See ya.